get ready to sell it. Well, wait a minute, where are we going to go? And how much is that going to cost us? I know your strategy is don't sell it.
Right.
Buy the next one and don't sell this one. That is not my strategy.
Exactly, yes.
At least. Especially in this situation. And so maybe we can discuss that real quick. So part of the reason why I like selling and buying in this particular scenario is that you sort of swap at the market.
Right.
Whereas if I go out and I buy another house and I don't cash in, and then the market takes a hit and I get to a point where I have to sell, now I could lose on both investments. So that's why I do like most people making the exchange when the market is high. Even if you feel like you're buying high, at least you get to pocket some profits or roll them into potentially, another investment at this market rate.
Right. And I think that there's no perfect scenario since every situation is unique. If you're moving from Valley Center to Carlsbad versus Carlsbad to Valley Center, it's a totally different situation. Since San Diego is filled with a bunch of local markets, the market that you're moving to and from will impact the scenario. I always advise many of my clients, and in my opinion, there are two new major demographics of buyers now. One is this buyer, the buyer that is in the market, somehow got in the market in the last 10, 15, 20 years, has equity. And now all of a sudden is deciding, hey, I've got a significant amount of equity. I know that the values are, the price points are higher. I'm not sure I want to go through another cycle now, again, as we went through before. So if I'm going to make a move, I'm going to make it now. That's demographic number one. Demographic number two is the assisted buyer, or the buyer that wants to jump into this market, doesn't have the down payment and mom and dad help, or gets some kind of gift or loan. But I always encourage everybody to at least look at the variety of options. And maybe an option is keeping the property, renting it out, and purchasing the other property independently, or borrowing against the first house. Again, I'm not a huge fan of over-leveraging, and it's got to be a conservative choice. But looking at how can we make the two transactions, instead of one concurrent transaction, do them independently. Because the problem when they're one concurrent transaction is that you're stuck. Here's what I mean. Let's say I'm selling a house, and we put the property in escrow, and lo and behold, you have a property that I want to buy, and I've come to you and I've said, hey, look, here's the deal. I want to buy your place, but I need to sell this place. And we're in escrow.
And I have some funny rounding that I like to do with my numbers. So.
And these numbers are going to round in my favor.
They'll I hope that is slightly throughout the process.
Just don't mind. Just go with it. The problem becomes, what if my buyer renegotiates with me and says, hey, I want a $10,000 price reduction. Based on what? Based on I don't know, the market change. Based on it needs new electrical outlets. Now I run into a situation where not only am I risking my transaction, but I'm risking our transaction as well, over $10,000. Same way, what if you and I have an issue and I discover that it needs a new roof?
Why do I have to be the issue?
Just saying, what if we have to work through some stuff?
And we'll do it like men, like they used to do things.
So there's a $10,000 roof repair, and you say no. Well, I'm selling a house, and I'm buying yours. So what am I going to do if I
cancel that one?
But it's very, very difficult as a seller to cancel.
Oh, is it?
I can't just say, hey, I changed my mind. Specific performance is something. I've had a couple situations, one in particular that happened last year, where we were the buyer, we had performed. 3 days before the close of escrow, the seller said, I want out.
So do you think that doing those legged transactions is a bad idea, that people should, if you're going to sell and buy, they should sell this one, go somewhere else, and then buy separately?
I think that, again, every situation is independent, so it's hard for me to make a sweeping statement about most.
What I need you to do is make a sweeping statement right now.
But for a sweeping statement, do them independently.
Okay.
Move twice. Sell, rent short term, then buy. Couple reasons why I say it. Number one is you can command top dollar. You can fight for top dollar on your sale. You can negotiate hard. I mean, this is a seller's market, of course, as we all know, but you can still negotiate with the seller, and you're not writing a contingent offer. You're not saying, hey, I love your house and I'll pay you fair market value, but I need to sell this one. And more importantly, since the terms of a contingent offer are less advantageous to a seller, many times you make up for crummy terms with a high price. But you get your money out, you do either a short-term rental, you can also do a lease back, depending. If that buyer's owner occupied, the maximum that you can do is 60 days. There's a lot of caveats and tangents here, but the benefit of doing them independently also means that if the idea is I've got $150,000 worth of equity in my current home and I want to use that towards a down payment, I likely want to make this move and be in that property for a long time. And depending what that property looks like and what the duration of a long time looks like, I probably want to be there for a while, so that probably means that I want to wait until I find something that I really love. I don't want to settle. Sometimes the talking of the catch-22, in my opinion, the catch-22 is either I go look at property now and find something I love and tell that seller, hey, I love your house, I'll pay you exactly what you want, but here's the deal. I need to list my place. It's not even listed yet. So I'll list it. Wait for me. Just give me 30 days. Most sellers in this market aren't going to do that. Or the other option, of course, is I list my property and then I'm crossing my fingers, hoping that the property that I really want is also going to come on the market at the same exact time. If you're moving into a tract community, easier. Hey, I'm looking for a Model 2 in Encinitas in a specific tract community with an HOA of $200. Okay, that makes things a little bit easier. If I'm moving from Carlsbad to Valley Center, Carlsbad's going to sell quick. Valley Center, depending on what I want, I might need something specific. I might need horse property that's flat with 4 acres that's under a certain price point. That it's not just coming on the market every single day.
I see what you mean, and that makes sense. Is this coming from experience that you have seen people lose money or make bad decisions because they were sort of put into a corner?
That's a great question. I would say put in a corner, definitely. And I think that a lot of my past clients that have made money in this market has been less about them getting a screaming deal at the appropriate time and more about them making a move and getting into the market and the market appreciated. Here's what I mean. Probably 90% of my clients purchased at fair market value at the time that they purchased, but they purchased in 2013. Mm-hmm. And so in the last 4 years, now they've made 10% or whatever the numbers may be.
More, probably.
Yeah, probably by now much more than that. So the challenge of doing them concurrently is you tend to have to sell a little lower because you need it to sell. I mean, if somebody is willing to accept an offer of a property we haven't listed, well, then I need to get this going. And so I can't fight for top dollar now. I need to price it correctly, aggressively, within the range, knowing that in a week or two I'll be in escrow, and then 30 days from then this will be done.
It does make sense. I think the only downside for people is that interim the moving twice thing. That's the real thing that people don't like. But what you're saying is you leverage both transactions. So when you're the seller, you're not going anywhere.
Exactly.
I don't have anywhere to be.
Exactly.
I'll wait for the offer that I want. I'll wait for the buyer that I want, and then I'll sell. And when I do, I'll go move over here. And then once I'm over there and this transaction's done and I've maximized it, then I'll start looking at properties. Then I'll start going, okay, how much money did we net out of this? How much do we have to play with? What can we really qualify for? Let's go write some offers. Let's see if we can actually get a house that we really like at a price that we feel comfortable with.
And moving sucks. Moving twice sucks like times 10.
Yes.
And moving into a temporary situation is even harder. Do I put all my stuff in storage? Do I find a furnished rental? If you rent month to month or a 3-month lease, those are not cheap rentals.
Yep.
It creates a kind of anxiety that is, hey, we need to look, we need to be active, we need to make sure that we're looking at the market. But in my opinion, poor financial decisions are made in haste. And if you end up doing one of those transactions in haste, you're more likely to overlook something or to make a bad decision just because you need a roof over your head.
Yeah.
And we're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars. Most people that are selling a property with equity, I bet as an average have between $50,000 and $150,000 worth of equity. So therefore they're leveraging themselves into a $750,000 property, $750,000 or more, and we're making that decision based on, well, shoot, I need somewhere to live.
That's crazy. You know, it's funny that you mentioned this. Hey, would you do me a favor and go grab my phone for me? I'm going to look up something, too, that we're going to talk about in a second. And we are going to arm wrestle, right, at the end of this?
Good thing I've been doing.
Just to kind of see who's got what here. Is I do remember someone who got a great buy. And I remember being like, you bought that for what? It was actually a real estate agent who bought it. And she bought this place. I was like, how did you buy it so well in this marketplace? And she's like, oh, the guy had already bought a place. He was already in escrow, and he was closing, and he really needed to sell.
He just needed the money out. It was less about exactly what he needed in terms of a price, and more about, I need speed.
Yes. So that's what you're talking about. That's
what you want to avoid.
You want to avoid that. Yeah, so a guy who basically gave away a place. Now, it wasn't in tip-top, like, perfect condition or anything like that.
Yeah.
It needed some TLC, but nothing major. It didn't need walls or even flooring or even, like, really anything major.
Right.
But it did need to be painted. It needed to be loved on and stuff like that, because this guy had, he was in escrow in his new place, and it was closing, but he needed the funds from the sale.
And to which I would say, think about the demographics of people that are in situations where they feel like, screw it, get me out of the property, I just want to be done with it and get the proceeds out. What are those demographics? Those demographics are, mom and dad have died, there's 4 siblings, the property's out in Kentucky, it's probate, we don't even care about the property. Mr. Realtor, Mrs. Realtor, get me the money, I don't care. Divorce, I do not want to live in the same house as you anymore. I am not.
Why are you looking into my soul while you say this? Like, is there something we need to share? Did you need to get something off your chest?
I'm working through it.
We are going to arm wrestle in a minute, so just save it up.
Same thing.
Yeah.
They're interested in, I want to buy my freedom. I will cut ties. Yes, it will screw me short term, but it gets me out of the property. I mean, there are several, and one of those other demographics is, I've already bought something else. I don't want to carry 2 mortgages. This property's now vacant.
Or I can't.
Or I physically cannot do it.
Can't be
or
done.
A lender won't approve me for my dream house if I held on to this property. And you know what? I have, in market value, I have $150,000 worth of equity. Fine, I'll take 95.
Yeah, that's, I think, what happened with this one.
Yeah.
Most smoking deal I've seen in the past couple years on a place.
Yeah.
An amazing look in Little Italy. In an amazing location.
Yeah, probably wasn't on the market.
There are a few things, yes.
Yes.
There are a few things that went wrong in that regard. But mostly, and I'm not going to get into the whole good agent, bad agent thing, but that's a whole other conversation. But that definitely was a factor in the situation.
Right.
And you see where, I believe you, I get it. I think a lot of people are going to have a hard time with the idea of, well, you just have to move twice and then you can leverage both transactions. Although it is probably the smart, I'm saying you should sell and buy instead of holding on to the property, especially when prices are high. I'm saying you should do that.
Right.
What you're saying is, okay, if you're going to do that, do it in 2 transactions. Because
Well,
you just like to argue with me about everything. So anything I say,
I'm going to say the opposite.
you say something different.
I'm saying there are other options, which is you can do it instead of sell-buy, you can do it buy-sell. What I mean is, you can do, if you can afford a HELOC, which is a home equity line of credit, you can borrow against the equity that you have in your current property. Now, a lender is going to look at debt-to-income ratios, and they're going to count that HELOC, that loan that you've taken out against the home, as debt. So it may affect your qualifications on the purchase. But then if I have $150,000 of equity and I'm able to get $75,000 in a home equity line of credit, maybe $75,000 at 3.2% for the first 4 months or whatever it is that they advertise, maybe that's enough to get me in the property, purchase it independent, because now I've got a property to stay in, and then as soon as I close escrow, then I go back, Steve Ploetz, vacant, staged.
Hey, ready to go. Well, a lot of people can't qualify for 2.
I agree. I agree.
That's the majority of people.
That is the majority of people. But to which I would recommend, if you're in the situation and you've got equity, look at your options. What is the market rent of the property? Yes, there's a headache in renting the property out. And hiring a property manager if you don't do it yourself. Headache. But maybe the financials make sense. What does it look like with a HELOC? What does it look like with me selling the property and moving twice?
what's crazy right now, and I don't know if this is new, and I want to talk about some of the guideline changes and some of the things that are happening in the lending space in just a second as you brought that up. But some of these vacation rental management companies are actually guaranteeing people a certain amount of money. That's crazy. So I know a buddy who has a 2-unit in Pacific Beach, and it's a beautiful place. It's probably worth, almost $2 million, let's say. But they guaranteed him 10 grand a month in vacation rental. Guaranteed him. Now he might get 20, but they guaranteed him. They said, we will personally write you the check for 10 grand if we can't rent it for at least that much, excluding our fees.
Yeah.
So another option might be not just renting it out, looking at market rent, but saying, hey, what if we hire a professional company to actually go and market this thing day by day? And the reason why I like that better isn't just because of the money, although the money is definitely greater, but also because when you do long-term rentals, people get hunkered down, they make messes,
right.
They have habits that are bad for the property. When you have people that are there for a week or 5 days or whatever, there's only so much damage they can do.
Right.
And then you have a crew that comes in and cleans up the place. So
and
I think
it
it's
gives
easier.
you a lot of freedom. I mean, as you've
Yes.
talked about, that there's going to, we don't know the catalyst to what is going to create the shift. And maybe the catalyst is going to be something as awful as Las Vegas or anything like that. And if there is that kind of catalyst and you are in a year lease with a tenant, you can't just say, hey, sorry, bud, I'm going to sell the property. Or you can, but now the lease conveys and it complicates things.
Sure.
And showing a property that is tenant occupied is not easy. But if you've got somebody on an Airbnb and you have them in there for 5 days and now all of a sudden they're out, it's easier to make the decision and go, you know what, I've thought about it, it's December, let's just sell it.
Yeah. And so if you're going to rent, I think that's if the property is vacation rentable,
right?
As many of them are not
I
now.
agree. Yes.
And I understand both sides of that coin. I really do.
Yeah.
I have no concern about taking business away from hotels. That's certainly not a concern. But I do understand the whole neighbor issue, and having people
right.
coming through, and people who are on vacation rentals are typically partying pretty good. They're doing something fun.
Right.
So they might make a little extra noise, not really care that much.
Right, because
about
they're
the
not building a
neighbors.
relationship with their neighbors.
They're not. That's the downside. But for you as the property owner, there's so many upsides to it. And this particular company, I think it was Mission Sands Vacation Rentals or something like that. I can't remember exactly, but they guaranteed him 10 grand a month. So he was looking at it and he's going, shoot, I can only rent it for maybe $6,500, the 2 units combined, but they're guaranteeing me 10.
Yeah.
Guaranteeing. So if the numbers don't pencil out on the long-term rental, maybe look at the vacation rental.
My takeaway would be analyze data. Look at data and analyze it. And if you don't feel comfortable analyzing data, have somebody have a realtor or a lender analyze data with you in order to get an idea of what are the actual options. And Excel spreadsheet. I mean, it's not, we got a lot of technology at our fingertips here. Look at what does it look like.
And you're talking about Excel spreadsheets over here. So much technology.
So much technology.
I was just checking out Fannie Mae today, which looks like it's up a little bit again. That's my big one, Fannie Mae.
Right.
Now, the reason I brought that up, I want to check it out today, is just to make the content timely, but also because guideline loosening
Right.
that's taking place right now. You and I have talked before about the frothiness potentially in the marketplace. For people, I really do believe, and I think we're even seeing a shift right at this moment, in this instant. The fourth quarter, I believe, is going to be slow. I do. I think it's going to be slow for inventory. I think it's going to be slow for transactions. I think sellers are going to have to come in. I think the bid and the ask there's a little distance there, and there's inventory coming next year for sure. So they have all these new buyer programs coming out, sort of like, here we go again type thing. Have you seen some of the stuff that's out there?
I spoke with a lender this morning. He said in the past, if you financed 4 properties, they would not allow you to pull equity out of one of, I think it's, he would know, but I think it's more than 4. If you have more than 4 financed properties,
right,
you cannot pull equity out of it. You can't refinance out of them to pull equity out. They've changed that.
Yep.
So now you can pull equity out. So now you can leverage on your leverage, so to speak. So I asked him, my very first question is, hey, every time guidelines loosen, do you get nervous? To which he said, it's not as bad as last time. It's a lot harder to get a loan now than it was then, but I know, as you say, every downturn is different. I never loved the idea of lending guidelines loosening, because there are benefits to it, but there are also repercussions to those benefits.
And the reason why I'm in that same boat and always will be is because they're already loose. Like FHA financing is crazy. I mean, would you give an FHA loan to somebody if you were the backstop?
If it's at 3.75% for somebody that has 3.5% down on a $500,000 property,
Yeah.
and they're putting $15,000 in or whatever it may
Yeah,
be.
would you loan that money out?
Me personally,
Yeah.
no, I would not.
No, you wouldn't, and nor would any other investor that exists out there. But
I don't have the
program's
safety
there.
net of the government.
Well,
Yes, I'm with you.
The pseudo safety net.
The pseudo safety net.
But my point is that we already have loose lending.
Right.
It doesn't need to be, when it starts to get looser, it's crazy no matter what it is. In fact, people could argue that VA and FHA loans are crazy to begin with, just as is. It's crazy. It's not smart. You know, it's risky. Let's put it that way. It's risky. Low credit scores, low down payments.
I think with VA, it's based on some job security. And granted, things can change if you're in the military. My brother-in-law is in the military and is making decisions about his 10-year mark and wondering, should I stay in for 20 and all the different things. I think the idea behind the VA loan is that those men and women have the earning years when they would be saving a down payment. They were overseas or wherever they were putting in their time, and I think that's one of the thought processes behind the VA loan. No money down.
I love the VA loan,
and and I agree with you that if 90% of our sales were no money down, those situations, that's not a lot of infrastructure for our market to be built on.
So do you know how many VA loans are closing every month in San Diego?
You do.
About 700.
Okay.
So, and we're somewhere around, let's call it 3,500 transactions. So it's actually about 1/5, but this is a pretty big military community.
Right.
So overall, I don't think the VA loan is going to take down the mortgage market or the real estate market, but the FHA, now that's a much bigger percentage. So, and then of course there's lots of cash buyers too in San Diego,
Right.
which is great. Actually, I think that's the best thing that we have going for us here, is that we have a lot of people who have bought in cash. So that you can't be more committed than that.
Right.
But because there are still so many programs that are considered to be loose or risky, to add more risk in, that starts to become crazy. And that's what we're starting to see. A lot of these wild programs with bank statements and stated income and multiple properties. We don't care how many properties you own. You can finance it in the LLC. We'll do the mortgage. I mean, all that stuff is coming back. It's great tools for people who want to get into the market who can't otherwise. Like there's some people who their taxes just will never add up,
right.
But they might be good for it. It's great for them, but it's also a sign. Why do we need to do that?
Right.
Why is that necessary?
And it's necessary, I would say, because the first-time home buyers that push our market are getting priced out of our market in San Diego. Is that I talked about the other demographic of the buyer, which is, hey, I'm 22 years old, I've got good income, but I don't have $80,000 in the bank for a down payment to compete. So let me put mom and dad on the hook on this. And I think that's an unfortunate situation for most buyers, that they feel like they need to reach someone else, or that they need to get a silent second, or that there needs to be some other entity to help assist. That's my opinion. That's not the idea of the first-time home buyer purchase, is that now not only are they in debt, but that they've put somebody else in debt on the hook.
All right, let's do it. I've heard enough.
We could Indian leg wrestle.
I don't know if anyone wants to see that. All right, so bottom line is, this is the big takeaway. And you got me a little bit with this one. I do like this, because if the inconvenience of a move, you can factor out what your cost is for the inconvenience of the double move, and that can be something that's reasonable. It would essentially be an investment in your two transactions.
That's a great way to put it.
That's the investment in your two transactions to
Right.
provide you the leverage. Sort of like your insurance to maintain the upper hand on both sides of the transaction is how much. How much does that cost? How much is the extra move?
And that's a great way to put it. And think about, so in San Diego County, how much is that? A short-term rental that you get into for 3-4 months. That's maybe furnished, so it's not cheap. That's maybe tops $15,000. And that's real money. I don't mean to make $15,000 not sound like it's real money. But do you think that you would give up $15,000 by doing a contingency on 2 transactions and claiming them as one, that a buyer might negotiate on 5 and that you might have to pay $10,000 more because of the contingency? I would say, hell yeah. So,
and it's not even that much really, because you have to pay, if your house payment was $3,000 before, and you're going over to $5,000.
Right.
You're really not, how
you
much
still need somewhere to live. Exactly.
Yeah, so you're not, it's not even 15. It would be a lot less than that, I think. And how much does the second move cost, or the storage? And I think if you can factor that all in and really look at it and go, okay, this is how much it's going to cost us. Let's say it's 10 grand total. The moves and the rentals, and we think it's going to take this long for us to find a home, so it's 10 grand that we're going to spend. And we will be inconvenienced with the second move, for sure. But is that worth it? Will we be able to, because that's just the plan. Remember, you still have to accept the offer. It's not like you have to go spend the 10 grand.
Right.
You put the home on the market with the idea that this is what we're going to do if we get the number we want. Does it make sense?
Right.
And if you have to look at that and go, well, based on that, we would need to get this much for the home.
Exactly.
Then you don't have to do anything.
And as silly as it sounds, most sellers don't do what you just did there, which is, let's figure out the numbers. Instead, what they do is they say, well, my neighbor sold for that, and I'm better than him. Everybody knows that. So I'm worth $10,000, $20,000 more. I've got crown molding in my place. My goodness. I put that in on Labor Day.
Carried it all the way through into the closet. Nobody does that.
Just this guy.
Just me.
So, and then they start to look at, well, what do I qualify for? So they figure out their basic numbers, and then they look at what the market has. I just think that if you just take the extra step and look at what are the options, it'll make a better decision in the end.
Yeah, and unless you have some sort of inside track on a buy side, it is competitive out there.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of the reason why we saw, especially through the earlier part of the year, a lot of people were writing these crazy offers. And it was because they were in the catch-22.
Right.
Where they had already written one offer on a place that they loved, didn't get it. And then they're like, well, gosh, we've got to get a place by this time because we're selling our place. So then the crazy offer came in on the next one.
Right.
And so it was just all about who was the most desperate. And that's no way to make good decisions.
When I represent sellers, there are many times that we'll look at a contingent offer and I'll say, there's a lot of things about this I really like. This buyer needs a roof over their head.
Yeah.
They're going to buy your house, and they're going to pay top dollar for it. Yes, we need to make sure that everything is good on their sales side. And if they're not on the market or in escrow, maybe that's not something that we're interested in. Maybe if they're just in the beginning of their escrow, I want to talk to the buyer's agent who's purchasing their house. Tell me about your client, their qualifications. Because now what we're doing is we're relying less on the pre-approval and the lending of our buyer, but we need to know about the qualifications of the down leg. But it's a motivated buyer.
Yeah.
It's a buyer that is squeezed.
Yep. And if you are on the other side of the transaction, that's exactly what you want. You don't want to be that guy.
Like your shiesty realtor friend.
Shiesty. She's not shiesty.
I mean,
opportunistic.
Opportunistic realtor friend.
You see opportunities, and that guy needed a buyer.
Oh yeah, yeah,
He did. He needed the cash.
Yeah, and she couldn't put it on the market and for a low price and get investors. No.
No. It takes too much time. He didn't have that kind of time. Steve, it's always great talking to you, man. Thanks for coming in today. Really appreciate it.
Hey, thank you. Happy early birthday.
Arm wrestle another time.
All right, off camera that way.
Since you're going to miss my birthday party, we'll do it off camera. I don't want people to see that.